What's going on, guys? It is a rough day for anything crypto related. Altcoins are tanking, Bitcoin miners are tanking, and we have to talk about what's going on. Bullish longs are getting a little too bullish. The leveraged traders are getting wiped out. Bitcoin sees the most liquidation since 2021 as this crazy reset wipes $1.6 billion. And apparently how this started, according to one analyst, is Coinbase traders began selling aggressively almost an hour before that mega dump. And this triggered a liquidation cascade. Things started going against the leveraged bullish traders and they started getting wiped out. This selling pressure was crucial in pushing the price into a region where over leveraged positions were forced to close. Funny enough, Ether longs suffered the most, and this is the biggest liquidation of this cycle so far, obviously, since the last biggest one was 2021. In my opinion, this is a good shakeout. We get shakeouts like this, the market can reset, we get rid of those people that are a little too over leveraged, and then we can go higher. Similar to the stock market, when you have too many people betting on calls, the market makers like to move it in the other direction and take your premium. It's messed up that people that are so bullish on Bitcoin at a time like this are actually losing a ton of money on Bitcoin, but they're betting on it the wrong way. Betting with leverage is high risk. And if you know what you're doing, that's definitely fine. But if you just think Bitcoin's going to go up and by betting leverage, you're going to make a ton of money, you need to remember there are pullbacks, and these pullbacks can get you absolutely wrecked. The best thing you can do, in my opinion, is just simply DCA Bitcoin, follow the cycle, buy while it's low, and trim while it's high. Same with the Bitcoin proxies. And it's obviously a little easier said than done, but when you follow the cycle, it makes it that much easier. And while we might not know where Bitcoin for sure is going to top out, within 6 months to a year, we will see Bitcoin top out, in my opinion. Because we follow the cycle, we know it will top out within 6 months to a year. And because we follow the cycle, we know it will probably bottom out sometime in late 2026, if not very early 2027. And I'll also bring this article down below for you guys. It goes over similar about the liquidations, but it also talks about a few other things. And here's something really interesting from the coinbase letter, I think it's called. In fact, core inflation is now back on the rise in all 3 major metrics reported by the US government. 1 month annualized PCE is nearing 4%. God, sorry about my voice. At 3-month annualized PCE, inflation is breaking 3%. Inflation could hit double the Fed's 2% target. And yes, we have seen inflation kind of taking up a bit. It is not just staying well under or at the Fed's 2% target. This is true. Let's keep looking over this, and then we'll look at some inflation data. We are getting some tomorrow. We are actually getting CPI tomorrow. But look at this. This is really interesting. Both gold and Bitcoin are in a perpetual bull market when indexed against the US dollar. Put differently, the US dollar is perpetually in a bear market. The US dollar continues to lose its value versus Bitcoin and gold. And look at the purchasing power of the dollar. Here's something really interesting. In 2008, during that, big recession, we saw the purchasing power of the dollar increase. That makes sense, obviously. People don't have money, things become cheaper, you get more for your money. Sure, but you mean to tell me the only time that the US dollar isn't in a decline is during a recession? Welcome to government currency. It's going to inflate right out from under you. Now, before I move on, I want to show you guys this. We know the spot Bitcoin ETFs have broke records, and IBIT alone has surpassed 50 billion in assets under management for the first time. It took only 228 days to reach this threshold, more than 5 times faster than any other ETF in history. Here's what Dr. Profit thinks. I don't know who this is, but let's see what he thinks. The next big move after this sideways move I have predicted last week is the breakout and targets between 125 135. This is where I expect the first 20 to 30% correction. I told you many times 100K is not the top of the cycle, and we'll move much higher and surprise everyone. I agree completely, but there is a possibility if things keep dropping, if we break our trend line. If potentially Bitcoin goes to test its 50 MA and fails, we could see that 20 to 30% correction sooner than this Dr. Profit expects. This could be the start of the 20 to 30% correction, but I personally am uncertain. I don't think so. Following the cycle, I think we will end the year somewhat strong, but who knows? Maybe there's a cycle where December ends up being pretty iffy. In reality, follow the cycle. Know that if we do have a correction now or in 3 months or whenever, we are going to end higher in 2025. And Michael Vanderpop reminds us, we're just about to break out of the longest altcoin bear market. We're about to see a weak dollar and liquidity to be added. I agree with the thinking that we will go way higher. Now, here's another interesting thing. This is how December 2020 played out. A 30% drawdown in others before a 3-month-long rally gaining 400%. We just had a 25% drawdown in others today. Total market cap excluding the top 10. So any of the altcoins excluding the top 10 in market cap. Could we be getting towards the end of this drawdown before our multi-month rally? I think so. This is definitely not the time, in my opinion, to worry, to panic. Maybe we pull back down a little more, cool down, test our 50 MA, like I said, in the high 80s. But you follow the cycle. We are going to top out in 2025. If we topped out this year, this would be the first time in any cycle that we have topped out on a halving year. To me, that just doesn't make sense based on so many factors, based on global M2, based on the cycle, obviously, based on the institutional demand, based on the spot Bitcoin ETF seeing inflows still. I personally believe, without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, that the top is not in. Who else believes this? Well, a lot of the people buying IBIT, obviously, they also believe Bitcoin is going much higher. BlackRock's IBIT registered one of its highest inflows of $394 million on Monday. And in the last 12 days, IBIT has not posted any outflows. All right, now tomorrow, as I said, we have CPI coming out. The forecast is a 2.7. This is the highest we've seen in quite a while. I personally really hope we can get a 2.6 or under. If we see what we saw last month or lower, that will be a very, very positive sign in terms of getting more rate cuts, in terms of seeing that inflation isn't ticking back up. If inflation starts rallying back higher, we are unlikely to get more rate cuts. That high inflation was the reason we got rate hikes in the first place. Inflation coming down is the reason we are getting these rate cuts. Inflation going back towards the Fed's goal was the whole reason we are starting to get these rate cuts, along with unemployment data looking a little worse. But I digress. My point is, if we see this heading higher, there is a real possibility that the Fed cools off a little bit on the easing process. Right now, the market is basically completely expecting a rate cut, a 25 basis point cut. Perhaps the likelihood of this changes. Keep in mind this next week, so December 18, we're going to get PPI and CPI before then. Maybe those come out really bad. Maybe CPI comes up over 2.7% and brings a little bit of fear, brings us closer to a 50-50 chance. At this point, it seems so likely that we're getting another rate cut, it's pretty much in the bag. Or at least that's what the market's expecting. Now, looking at Bitcoin, we've been getting some bearish divergences as we were kind of topping out here. The price was rising. The RSI was cooling down. We were starting to lose our momentum, and we are kind of cooling down a bit. I'm watching this trend line. If we actually close out of this, not just a wick like in previous times, if we actually close out of this, this may be a sign we're going to break this, head lower, and test our 50 MA. Our 50 MA currently is at 85K. If you guys have watched other videos, you see that the 50 MA has been consistently rising as we've been rising. It's a lagging indicator. Not long ago, the 50 MA was under $80,000. Now it's looking a lot more possible that we can come down and test it, isn't it? It's a lot more reasonable to think that Bitcoin can come down and test 85K versus being at 100,000 and thinking Bitcoin can come down and test its 50 MA back when it was in the 70,000s. So now to me, it's seeming like more of a possibility. We're going to use this as a launching off point, at least as a testing point. I think that would be healthy. That would be good. If we just keep running and running, that brings more worry to me, at least. So in my opinion, a healthy little consolidation for a short period would be perfectly fine, and I'd welcome it. Let that RSI cool down a bit more. Let the price level out a bit. Maybe even back test 90K as a support. See how it holds up before we head higher. We want to establish as many levels as we can, so when we start ripping later in the year and we have a major pullback, we can use these levels as support. If we just keep going up and up and up without establishing any sideways action, the likelihood of using those levels as support is much lower and lower. What comes up violently will come down violently. Keep an eye on the bullish divergences on the shorter term time frames. We might get a pop soon. What I'm seeing is we are starting to get the price to level out here. The RSI seems to be on its way lower. There's a bullish divergence. The RSI and the price aren't lining up, but we need to see where this closes out, obviously. My point is just keep an eye on this. See what the candles and the RSI tells us. This might just be another quick down wick to shake out any stop losses before we get back in this trend and continue it out. But you know, my opinion is follow the cycle and you'll do perfectly fine. Maybe we have a pullback here. Maybe we have a pullback in 3 to 6 months from now. I think what is most important to think about and realize is it is very unlikely that we have already topped out. There are many metrics pointing to the fact that we have not topped out. The MVRV score, the NUPL, the RSI on the weekly, monthly. I think these indicators will give us a more clear sign when we have topped out. They are not pointing to it yet at all. But thanks as always for watching, guys. How are you feeling today? Days like these can be rough, but they can be great days for those of us still looking to add. Of course, if your bags are packed, these days are kind of tough to deal with. But for those of you looking to accumulate, these are fantastic days to add. Anyways, thanks as always for watching, guys. I appreciate the support, and I'll see you on the next one.